Steve Jobs built Apple in his garage, turned it into the most iconic technology brand in history, and then got thrown out of his own company by a man who used to sell sugar water. That is not an exaggeration. That is literally what happened. And Jobs is far from the only founder who built an empire only to be escorted out the front door. This list is a masterclass in boardroom betrayal, ego, and the brutal truth that creating something does not mean you get to keep it. You're watching Wealth Ranked. Number 10. Andrew Mason, Groupon. Andrew Mason founded Groupon in 2008, and within 2 years it was the fastest growing company in internet history. Google offered to buy it for $6 billion. Mason said no. That decision haunted him. Groupon went public in 2011 at a valuation of $13 billion, but the business model was fundamentally flawed. Daily deals attracted bargain hunters, not loyal customers. Merchants lost money on Groupon promotions and stopped coming back. Revenue growth stalled. The stock cratered over 80% from its IPO price. In February 2013, the board fired Mason. His farewell memo became legendary. He wrote, "After 4.5 intense and wonderful years as CEO of Groupon, I have decided that I would like to spend more time with my family. Just kidding. I was fired today. Brutally honest." But here is where it gets interesting. Groupon never recovered. The company that rejected a $6 billion acquisition from Google is now worth less than $500 million. Mason might have been the problem, but firing him was definitely not the solution. Number 9. Jerry Yang, Yahoo. Jerry Yang co-founded Yahoo in 1994 in a Stanford University trailer. By 2000, Yahoo was the most visited website on the internet, valued at over $125 billion. Then Yang made what might be the single worst business decision in corporate history. In 2008, Microsoft offered to buy Yahoo for $44.6 billion. Yang rejected the offer, convinced Yahoo was worth more. The board was furious. Shareholders revolted. Yang was forced to step down as CEO later that year. Yahoo continued to decline, eventually selling its core internet business to Verizon in 2017 for $4.8 billion. That is a 96% discount from the Microsoft offer Yang rejected. The irony is suffocating. Yang held onto Yahoo because he believed in its value, and that belief destroyed almost all of it. Number 8. Jack Dorsey, Twitter. Jack Dorsey co-founded Twitter in 2006 and served as its first CEO. He was pushed out in 2008, replaced by Evan Williams, reportedly because the board felt he was more of a visionary than an operator. Dorsey went on to build Square, now called Block, into a $50 billion payments company. Then, in a twist nobody expected, Twitter brought him back as CEO in 2015. He ran both Twitter and Square simultaneously, something the board increasingly grew uncomfortable with. Twitter's user growth stagnated. Revenue was inconsistent. In November 2021, Dorsey stepped down again under board pressure. Just months later, Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion and dismantled most of what Dorsey had built. Dorsey publicly expressed regret about what Twitter became, saying the company should never have been a company at all. The man who invented the tweet essentially admitted the whole thing might have been a mistake. Number 7. Rob Kalin, Etsy. Rob Kalin founded Etsy in 2005 as a marketplace for handmade goods. The platform grew rapidly, attracting millions of crafters and artists. But Kalin's management style was described as erratic and unfocused. The board removed him as CEO in 2008. They brought in a professional manager. Then, in an unusual move, Kalin lobbied to return and was reinstated as CEO in 2009. It lasted less than 2 years. The board fired him again in 2011, this time permanently. Under new leadership, Etsy went public in 2015 at a valuation of $3.5 billion. Today it is worth roughly $6 billion. Kalin reportedly still owns shares, but he walked away from public life entirely. Being fired from your own company once is painful. Being fired twice from the same company is a special kind of devastating. Number 6. Travis Kalanick, Uber. Travis Kalanick co-founded Uber in 2009 and turned it into the most disruptive transportation company in history. At its peak, under Kalanick, Uber was valued at nearly $70 billion. But the culture he built was toxic. Reports of systemic sexual harassment, a federal investigation into the use of secret software to evade regulators, and Kalanick's own behavior, including a viral video of him screaming at an Uber driver, created an avalanche of bad press. In June 2017, 5 major investors sent Kalanick a letter demanding his resignation. He fought it initially, then gave in. But here is what most people miss. Kalanick did not go quietly. He retained his board seat and spent years maneuvering behind the scenes. He eventually sold most of his Uber shares for over $2.7 billion. Getting fired made him a billionaire several times over. The punishment for building a toxic empire was getting paid billions to leave it. Number 5, Steve Jobs, Apple. This is the granddaddy of all founder firings. Steve Jobs co-founded Apple in 1976 with Steve Wozniak and Ronald Wayne. By 1985, Apple was struggling. The Macintosh was not selling well enough. Jobs and CEO John Sculley, the former Pepsi executive Jobs had personally recruited, clashed repeatedly over the company's direction. The board sided with Sculley. Jobs was stripped of all operational responsibilities and essentially forced out. He sold all but one of his Apple shares. Then he did something extraordinary. He founded Next, which built the operating system that would eventually become the foundation of modern macOS. He bought Pixar from George Lucas for $10 million, and it became the most successful animation studio in history. In 1997, Apple was 90 days from bankruptcy when they acquired Next and brought Jobs back. Over the next 14 years, he launched the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad, turning Apple into the most valuable company on earth. The man they fired built their salvation during his exile. That is the greatest revenge story in business history. Number 4, Dov Charney, American Apparel. Dov Charney founded American Apparel in 1989 and built it into a billion-dollar fashion brand, famous for its Made in America ethos and provocative advertising. But Charney's behavior was a ticking time bomb. Multiple sexual harassment lawsuits, allegations of creating a hostile work environment, and erratic decision-making led the board to suspend him as CEO in June 2014. He was officially terminated in December 2014. Charney fought back, attempting a hostile takeover of his own company by buying up shares through hedge fund allies. It failed. American Apparel filed for bankruptcy in 2015, then again in 2016, and eventually liquidated entirely. Without Charney, the brand had no identity. With Charney, the brand had too much liability. There was no version of this story that ended well. Number 3, Eduardo Saverin, Facebook. Eduardo Saverin co-founded Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, putting up the initial $15,000 that kept the company alive. As Facebook scaled, Zuckerberg and Sean Parker systematically diluted Saverin's ownership stake from 34% to less than 10%. Saverin was removed as CFO and cut out of the company entirely. He sued. The settlement, depicted in the film The Social Network, reportedly gave Saverin a 5% stake. When Facebook went public in 2012, that stake was worth over $4 billion. Saverin moved to Singapore, renounced his US citizenship, and became one of the wealthiest people in Southeast Asia. He was betrayed by his best friend, and it made him a billionaire. Number 2, Sam Altman, OpenAI. In November 2023, the OpenAI board of directors fired Sam Altman as CEO, citing a loss of confidence in his leadership. The move shocked the entire technology industry. Within 48 hours, over 700 of OpenAI's 770 employees signed a letter threatening to quit and follow Altman to Microsoft. Satya Nadella publicly offered Altman a role leading a new AI division. The pressure was overwhelming. 5 days after being fired, Altman was reinstated as CEO, and the board members who fired him were replaced. It was the fastest and most dramatic founder firing and unfiring in corporate history. The episode revealed something crucial. In the age of AI, the talent is the company. When the board fired Altman, they nearly destroyed OpenAI entirely, not because of strategy, but because the people followed the person, not the institution. And number 1, the lesson. Every single one of these stories shares a common thread. Founders build with vision, boards manage with spreadsheets. When those two worldviews collide, the spreadsheets usually win in the short term, but the vision wins in the long run. Jobs proved it. Kalanick proved it in reverse. Yang proved what happens when you have vision but not market timing. The most dangerous position in business is being a founder who owns less than 51% of their own company. The moment you give up control, your fate is in someone else's hands. Boards are risk-averse, short-term thinkers elected by shareholders who want returns this quarter, not revolutions next decade. If you learned something, hit subscribe. New rankings every week. You're watching Wealth Ranked.